Hey there, AQR students. We're doing activity sheet 11 today. It's all about activity graphs. All right, and we're going to do the first half of it today. We'll finish it up tomorrow. So let's just jump in. You can see what activity graphs are all about. Okay, so we're starting activity sheet 11, activity graphs. So here's the situation. You are in charge of organizing the senior class party. The following is your estimate of the time required to perform all the necessary activities. And we have a table here, 5 different things to get ready for the party. We have to plan the music playlist. We have to download the music, and you can see the time and hours here. We have to buy groceries and decorations. We have to bake the cake and prepare food. And finally, we have to set up for the party. Since there are several classmates, some of these tasks can be performed at the same time. For instance, people can begin setting up the decorations while the cake is baking. However, you cannot bake the cake or set up until after the shopping has taken place, and you cannot begin downloading music until you know what songs you want to download. So the following activity graph, we're going to be using, that's what this is all about, is what activity graph. So this picture here, right here, is an activity graph. Following activity graph can be used to help organize this information. All right, so we have the activity graph. Look it over real quick, and then answer these questions. Number 1, what do the numbers in this graph represent? And number 2, why is there an arrow going from activity A to activity B, but not from activity A to activity C? All right, you're going to answer those questions right now. Okay, number 3. Beginning at start, there are several paths through the graph following the arrows that end at finish. For each path, calculate the total time required to perform all the activities along the path. Okay, so I see 3 distinct paths. All right, so calculate the time. One of them goes from A to B. That's your first path. I'll let you figure out the other 2. All right, figure out the time for each path. Number 4, what is the minimum amount of time required to perform all 5 activities? So think about that. What is the minimum amount of time required to perform all 5 activities? Number 5, which path corresponds to this minimum time? Which activities are along this path? And then number 6, which activities could take a little longer to complete without affecting the total completion time? Okay, to illustrate this concept of minimum time and activities along that path, I've made out kind of what I'm going to use here for a timeline here. So I have the start here. This is the starting time. Each of these lines represents an hour. Okay, so activity 1 I know is going to take half an hour. So I'll just put a box in here for actually activity A. All right, 0.5. And then activity B will take an hour. It has to come after activity A. It's going to take an hour, so we'll extend that far right there. 1.0. Activity C will take 2 hours. C is going to be 2 hours. And then coming after that will be activity D, which takes 1.5 hours. Activity D, 1.5. And then the activity E, which will start after activity C, and that will take 2 hours. And so the earliest I can be finished with everything, here's going to be my finish. And the earliest I can finish is after, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. Okay? So my minimum time here is 4 hours. And the path that lends that time, path that corresponds to that would be CE. CE is going to be the path that gives me that 4 hours, which turns out that's the longest path. So it turns out that the longest path will give you your minimum time. Okay? The longest path will give you your minimum time because that's the earliest that you can possibly finish. Which activities could we take a little bit longer? Well, D, we could extend activity D by about a half hour. Extending A and B could actually be extended quite a bit. Okay? They only take an hour and a half out of this entire 4 hours. They really could, I could wait 2 hours, 2.5 hours before I even started A and still be able to finish in time. All right? So that's how that's going to go. So minimum time, 4 hours. CE is going to be that path that lends itself, that corresponds to the 4 hours. And we called that the critical path, which I think is going to come up in just a little bit. All right. Scheduling classes in college can be very similar to the previous scenario. Over the 4 years, there are certain classes that you must take, and many classes have prerequisites, classes that must be taken first. Suppose you need to take the following classes with the identified prerequisites. All right, so Calculus 1 has no prerequisite, but Calculus 2 cannot be taken until you have finished Calculus 1. Physics 1 cannot be taken until you have finished Calculus 1. Physics 2 comes after Physics 1. And then psychology, speech, and argument. Psychology and speech have no prerequisites, but argument and debate has to come after speech. So now you are to construct an activity graph for this situation using the following rules. Create start and finish squares. Any activity that can be performed right away is connected to start. In other words, those without prerequisites. And activity A is connected to activity B by an arrow only when activity A needs to be performed directly before activity B. Any activity that does not precede any other activity can be connected to finish. And so if it's not connected to something after it, then it goes to finish. Okay? All right. So draw your activity graph here at the bottom of the page. And then I'm going to ask you to take a picture of that and upload it as part of your practice at the end of the lesson. Okay? All right, we'll pause, let you work on that. Okay, so now you're going to answer some questions about that activity graph you just made. Identify the longest path. How long is it? That's number 8. Number 9, if each class is a semester long, how many semesters are needed to take all of these classes? Okay? In other words, that's going to be your minimum time. What's your minimum time to finish all of the classes? Number 10, if you want to finish these classes as soon as possible, which classes should you not delay taking? Number 11, how long could you wait to take Psychology 1 without delaying your overall program of classes? And number 12, how long could you wait to take Speech without delaying your overall program of classes? Okay, number 11, how long could you delay Psychology? Number 12, how long could you delay the speech class? All right. 13, given any activity graph like the previous ones, explain how you would determine the minimum time required to perform all activities. How long to perform all activities. And number 14, activities that cannot be delayed without increasing the minimum time for completion are called critical activities. Given any activity graph like the previous ones, explain how you would determine which activities are critical activities. So I'm going to put all of these starting with number 7, your activity graph, and then these questions 8 through 14. I'm going to put these on today's practice for you to answer. So there you go. All right. So work on that. Hope this makes sense. We will finish up this activity sheet tomorrow. All right. All right. So that was the beginning of activity graphs. Like I said, we will finish up student activity sheet 11 tomorrow. Hope everything made sense. Be sure you turn in the practice, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.